Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sonali's Book Club. The tie-up, we've been putting it out, we've been putting out the tie-up with the Indie Bookstore Festival. I have a beautiful surprise for you, but let me explain something about the Indie Bookstore Festival. It is a celebration of the independent bookstore in our country. And through this indie bookstore movement, what we intend to ensure is that the bookstores survive and they thrive, and as the cornerstones to the creative dialogue, to the community that is very intrinsic to storytelling. The festival will come to your homes from the 18th of February, and they have some beautifully curated sessions for you, which you can, from the 18th of February, you can access those at your home. But the request here is that the 2 years have been very, very difficult on the independent bookstores. And if you could step out of your homes, go to your favorite bookstores, which are still open, let's support them. They have got some amazing deals going. Let's go, let's feel the book, touch them and smell them, and go and get ourselves some beautiful stories and support this movement. Today, on this session, I am delighted, honored to welcome as our keynote speaker for the Indie Bookstore Festival, Mr. Ruskin Bond. And oh my God, whatever I say about him is less, but let me just give you a few short introduction. I'm sure he doesn't need it, but just a few words. And this is a truly fangirl moment happening for me over here, but still. So we all know he's one of the most enduring writers in our country. And he's someone who has connected to all age groups. We've all read his books, loved them, enjoyed them. He's, of course, won many, many awards, the Sahitya Akademi Award, the Sahitya Akademi Bal Puraskar Award, the Padma Bhushan and Padma Shri, and oh my God, he's published over 300 short stories, about some 30 books. I think we should just start the session. Let me not talk about it anymore. Let's hear him. Mr. Bond, welcome to the session. And once again, it's so much of a joy and honor to have you on this and be able to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What shall I talk about? Bookshops?
So, we are on a
I could go on forever, but I grew up with independent bookshops. You know, as a boy, I was a bookworm, and even when I came home from school during holidays, I would go and search out the bookshops in town. And I didn't have much pocket money in those days, so I really couldn't buy many books. But so I would locate the secondhand bookshop sometimes,
right,
and did a lot of my reading thanks to them. And of course, as a boy, I would, when I did buy a book, I would concentrate on those paperbacks, you know, Crime Club or Penguins and others, which in those days were just 2 or 3 rupees.
right.
So if I had 5 rupees pocket money every month, I could buy 2 books. So there they were. So all kinds of bookshops. And even as I grew older,
because we are talking about the independent bookstore movement,
yes.
But do you have any particular, like, really sweet memory attached to it, which you till today remember that this happened and this was which you connect with a bookstore always, something which is a really special memory?
Yes, sure. Well, in Dehradun, we have 2 or 3 bookshops, and most of them go back to the early 1950s.
Right.
I've been a close friend with one of the booksellers, Upendra Arora, who runs the Natraj bookshop. And well, I used to go to his bookshop when his father was alive. And it has expanded a bit since then. And God willing, it will continue to do so. So that's a relationship with a bookseller and friend that goes back Well, 70 years, no? 1950s?
While you were in the bookstore, that probably his father was running at that point of time, and
Yes,
you
his
and
son
that
is
meant
running
it
it now.
stayed strong till now.
Yes, his son is running it now. And then, you know, back in the 1960s, when I used to travel a bit, and I went to Bangalore and I discovered a little bookshop called this. At that time, it was run by a Mr. Rao, and it had books as well as all sorts of memorabilia and postcards and stamps. And I kept in touch with him over the years, and he would send me little handwritten lists of the books he thought would interest me, and
Right.
I would uh, communicate by post. And then he passed away, and then his son continued to run it. And I last heard from him about 3 months ago. He's about 96 and still running the bookshop.
Wow.
Well, he was till 3 months ago, and I hope he still is. Yeah.
I hope so too. Thank God.
I've had these very long relationships with some bookshops, and they are all, as you say, independent bookshops, not run by any. Although all kinds of, you know, bookshops on the pavement or railway bookstores, they all fascinate me. And if I just, in fact, if I hadn't been a writer, I would been happy to be a bookseller. Something
I understand.
that constant association. With
You're a prolific writer, and you've been writing for a long time. But so, have you ever had a writer's block? Where do you draw your inspiration from? Because you're so consistent. So
yeah, I don't often get writer's block, because if I say want to write a story, I'd have mapped it out in my head. The beginning, the middle, and the end, the characters, the sort of dialogue that they're going to speak. So then I've written it like a little film in a way. So I've visualized it. So then I've just got to put it into words, and interesting words and sentences. So in that way, you don't get writer's block. So you need to sort of work on it beforehand. Otherwise, just as an examination in school, you're halfway through an essay, and then suddenly you're stuck, and then you say, now what do I write next? So it's always useful to make your notes and plan it. But of course, you don't always have to plan a thing. I might want to write a poem, and it just comes out of nowhere. I mean, it's not something that you decide. It's not going to be like a skeletal structure that you have to put together. It's an emotional thing. So it varies with different mediums and genres, I guess. But writer's block.
Interesting what you're saying is because when I talk to various authors, that a lot of times there are some writers who really map things out and it's very systematic about the whole thing. But from what you say, you're very intuitive about it, and it's
Yes,
more like it wells up and comes out for you.
Right. I might just say a morning, open my window to the sun when the sun is there, and I just might see something down the road below, or a bird might come and sit on the windowsill, or it'll just set off a train of thought. And that's why nature appeals to me, because it's unplanned very often. And I write about the natural world very often because I respond to it. And there too, you don't need, in a way, to make plans to plan it out or to work it out in advance. It comes naturally.
So a lot of our members in the book club are aspiring writers, and they always want to know what. So the next question that it brings me to is, what do you think? Are writers born or are they made?
A bit of both, but I think basically, if you look at all the great writers over the centuries, I think it was something that's within their nature, the desire to write or the ability to write. So I think they are born. But you might need to, even if you are a born writer, might need to train yourself a bit and learn a few things.
Right.
And of course, you can learn to write. I mean, after all, you don't have to be writing novels or poems. You can be a writer of biography or history or science or medicine. So the ability to write well can lead you into so many fields where it isn't necessary for you to have been born with that instinct or natural instinct to write. But otherwise, I'd say basically the great poets are those who I would say, yes, they were born that way.
Yeah. So with all the writing that you've done, is there any genre that you still feel that you need to explore? Is something that you feel you haven't attempted as yet and you would like to?
Yes, I'm not smart enough to do it, but I'd love to write a good detective story. But that's not easy. I love reading them, you see. I love reading detective stories and
Oh my
crime.
God, but that would be so lovely. You know, if you would come up with a detective story in that style, oh my God, we want that.
I don't know if there's time for it, but let's see. Who knows?
Please, that would be fabulous.
Yes, so that would be nice.
Yeah,
so that's one thing. I've written hundreds of short stories, of course, and novellas and the odd novel and poems and books for children. So I haven't left out much, but I'd like to do the detective story.
Looking forward to it. I really wish and hope that you do write it, because that would be a pleasure for us as readers. We would love to read that. That would be interesting. I do run this book club, so I want to ask you this question. What do you think is the role of book clubs in our community? And do you think there should be more of them?
It's good. Yeah, it brings people together. You can then talk about the books you're reading and recommend the ones you like to your friends and to other members. It's also, there's something companionable about it too.
Yes.
Most of my life, I've done my reading, alone in a little nook or sunny corner, but it's certainly nice to meet friends and talk about the book you're enthusiastic about.
Absolutely. So just to share this, I started the book club because when I got onto social media, and I just thought it was such an amazing medium if I could use it positively. And I was thinking, how can I use this positively? And I was just losing touch with reading, getting caught up with all the various distractions. It was just a way to getting back to reading, because I would have to finish a book so that I would discuss. And so it just started as using the social media and just, in a very positive way, and just getting a community together. And then the way it went, this community literally handheld me and carried me through my cancer treatment. And, it just kept me going, because I could read a book, I could discuss it with them without having to get out of my bed. It just gave me such a community feeling. So it was, you're right about it, that, the discussion, and it just took me through a really difficult phase of my life in that sense. So.
There's an atmosphere too about a book club, which...
that the recommendations that you get, and there are times when left to me, I probably would not have jumped into so many genres and tried some new books, but because they come recommended, and because suddenly I'm thinking of what you think everybody might enjoy, and you try to read different books. So it's just been wonderful for me as to have this book club.
That's true.
What I want to ask you, the parents are really struggling nowadays, to keep the kids from their screens, to keep them engaged in reading. And what do you think we could do to inculcate this habit in the kids?
To revive the habit of reading, you mean, and keep it going? Yes. Well, reading
these constant visual mediums where they're getting answers so quickly, and everything is quick gratification.
See it all the time.
To read has become so difficult, and most of our members and everybody, any parent I meet, is the constant thing is that our children are not reading enough. Our children are not reading enough is what they keep saying.
But that chant, the children are not reading enough, I used to hear it in 1950 when I finished school. I used to hear it in through the 50s and 60s and 70s, children are not reading enough. They always used to say it. And it's true. They never did read enough. Let's go back to my school days, and I went to a good school, Hill Station School. We had an excellent library, but I was in a class of 30 boys, and there were just 2 of us who really bothered to use that library or read the books in it. So I'd say reading was a minority pastime then, at a time when there was no television, no internet. You could go to the movies once a month, maybe, and up and go to town and see a film. And boys read comics, and that was the majority of them went that far. But actual readers, genuine readers, were very scarce, were very few, and it's always been the case. And what I notice now is it's still the case, of course. So people want instant gratification. So do kids. But I do meet young people, boys and girls, who read. I know, because otherwise nobody would be buying my books. I presume having paid for them and bought a book, they would at least attempt to read it. So,
or like me, the mother who's reading it to the child, hoping that, thinking that's so fine if you're not, at least he's seeing the visual, it's fine. Let me read it.
I guess a lot of bought by parents in the hope that their children will read them. But I do meet young readers, and those are the ones who want to be writers very often. And there's no dearth of young people who want to be writers. It's amazing. When I left school in 1950, and I came home, and my mother said, well, what are you going to do with yourself now, Ruskin? And I said, Mom, I think I'm going to be a writer. She said, don't be silly, go join the army immediately. And there was nobody ever thought of becoming a writer then, when you left school. And you didn't have much choice of a profession anyway.
Right.
But now every day I get letters from kids or from young people who send me their self-published books, and obviously there are more writers than readers around. We all end up reading our own books.
To hear that what you said, that this was something that parents said in 1950s also. I think that just says it all, that we all as parents need to calm down, and the kids who are going to be readers and who are going to love reading are going to read anyway. And it just makes us feel better.
Yes, the number of people who can read has grown to hundreds of thousands.
Right.
So if even a very small percentage of them are book readers,
right,
that's thousands.
Here we are talking about independent bookstores. We are talking to each other, sitting in our own homes. Technology has changed so much, and so much is happening with it. How good are you with technology?
Oh, I'm totally illiterate technologically. I wouldn't be talking to you now if it wasn't for the 50's little sister here, Vaishnavi, who's fixed this up. So I don't even have a phone. I don't have a mobile phone. I use theirs. I'm very cunning like that.
Good one. That's a good idea. So what do you think of gadgets like Kindle or Audibles, where you can hear the books and where you can carry 50 books in one little tablet? What do you think of these innovations?
Well, I'd like to choose the 50 books myself, and not just be at the mercy of somebody else's choice.
You can put the books that you want, you can choose them and put them in your library, just that you carry. Because I remember when I started working, and when I would travel a lot for my work, and it was for me, books were my security blanket. So suddenly my one suitcase used to be filled with books that I took with me on the outdoor shoots and all of that. And now suddenly it is so much more easier to kind of carry it on one gadget, and there you can put all your books on it. sometimes I do feel like, am I letting, the physical books down, the bookstores down? How does it work? But it's convenient also. So how do you think this can be married? This love for actual physical
Certainly a
books.
Kindle useful for a busy person, a traveling person. But I've spent all my life with the physical book, and they accumulate. They're under my bed. They're on the ceiling. They're in all sorts of places where they shouldn't be. So books do accumulate, but that's okay if you're living in one place and you're not having to lug them around with you. I like having a sort of library. I like the physical book, the feel of it, and the way they're produced very often, because a book can be produced very beautifully.
Yeah.
The illustrations, particularly for children's books. I mean, a children's book can all the difference can be there due to the pictures, the illustrations.
Yes, absolutely.
Just as Alice says at the beginning of Alice in Wonderland, what good is a book without pictures? So at least for children, you need a beautiful production.
Yeah, it attracts them. Yes.
Yes. So for young people and even for grown-up people, I like a well-bound book on good paper, and neatly printed without printing mistakes, and so it then becomes an object that you want to keep.
Yes, absolutely.
Or collect, and of course some people collect old books or antiques too, but I haven't got into that stage. But still, a good book is for keeps. You want to keep it with you and turn to it from time to time. I mean, you have favorites like mine are The Story of My Heart by Richard Jefferies, or even Thoreau's Walden and other books, which I don't just read and put them away. I turn to them from time to time. So you want them around.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So, what was that first book that got you started? When you saw it, you fell in love. What was that first book that you fell in love with, and the love for this lifelong love for books started?
Yes, it started with David Copperfield. Really, and I immediately identified with young David because he was about my age when he ran away from home, and I decided to try it too. Didn't have enough pocket money. Came back the next day feeling very hungry. But anyway, of course, David grew up to become a writer, and I wanted to grow up to become a writer. So it made a deep impression on me. Nowadays, I find Dickens hard to read, but when I was a boy, I read all his works. Amazing. When I was 12, 13, 14, I read the complete works of Dickens. Now I'll dip into Dickens, but I'm not going to read one of those huge fat novels from beginning to end. And yet, as a boy, I did. It's amazing. Huh? Yeah. So that was one book. Then I loved another, Wuthering Heights. Emily Bronte's a very passionate story of her tragic love. So there was that, and then I liked ghost stories. There was M.R. James. Ghost Stories of an Antiquary, and then I discovered Woodhouse, Love Among the Chickens, and all sorts of books. Everything. I read everything.
What were the genres? Did you ever like science fiction or science fantasy?
No, I'm no good at it, and I don't enjoy reading it either. No, it's one of my things that I didn't take to, let's say. Yeah, I admire people who can write it. You need to have a vivid imagination, I think.
Yes,
and inventive.
So, today, in the coming years, are there any new young writers who you really enjoyed reading, and you think you can suggest it for us, and that you think we should also read?
Well, there are so many young writers coming through now. Some writing for children, others doing quite well, you see, up to up to the 19.
What is the latest young writer or new writer that you read, new book that you read, at which you were like, okay, this is fantastic, and you would
I can't immediately place one.
okay.
I can't immediately place one, although I see new books coming out all the time, and some of them are taking off.
Yeah. So what is next? What should we look forward to now?
Oh, next, I don't know. You see, just recently I think it's age, but I've had some difficulty in say, if I sit down to write 3 pages, I'll write one and then the pen will slip from my hand and I'll nod off. So I'm being, I don't know what it is. I think that it's not it's some sort of something to do with the neck, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but I'm very smart, very clever. I'm writing limericks and funny verses and naughty rhymes and things like that for a change. So I have to write something. So
It also kind of so your process of writing is pen to paper. You've never kind of like dictated what you feel. You don't feel like writing. Does that ever happen?
yes, I've got to keep writing whatever happens. You're right.
You need that pen to paper and that.
It's been like that for 70 years.
Oh my God! Yes, amazing, Mr. Bond. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking
Thank you for
with
all
you.
your
Wonderful conversation, and really completely.
You got me talking. You got me talking. I don't usually talk so much. Thank you.
I'm so glad, and really, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you.
My privilege.